guys, so today we are working on canning up some dill relish. This is something that I do every year because my family eats a ton of it. It seemed like a really good project for today because I have some cucumbers that I've harvested, but not enough to make pickles yet. So we're gonna use pickling cucumbers and then a few other like random slicers that I had to make this dill relish. So I'm gonna bring you along today and show you how I do it. This recipe is in the Ball Blue Book. If you don't have this canning book already, you should. I make probably 80% of my recipes for canning out of this book. That's why it's like water damaged and not in the best shape anymore. But the recipe for dill relish is in this book and I'll show it to you. I do make a couple modifications, not enough to change the safety of the recipe, but I'll show you what I do just instead of some of the things that are in here. So I'm gonna grab out all the pickles. I've been just storing them in the fridge because I've just been getting a couple a day, and I'm gonna wash them off and just clean them up, and then we will do the first step to this recipe. And I'm gonna apologize in advance. We are working on our porch today. It's a project that's been 2 years in the making, so the guys are outside working on decking, which is why if you can hear the background noise, they are screwing in the decking today. So, but we're gonna work on this project and I'm gonna show you how to make dill relish. Okay, so I pulled up the recipe first because it's always good to know what we're doing before we get started. If you have the same edition of the Ball Blue Book, the recipe is on page 87. And I'm just gonna show it to you guys. So it takes 8 pounds of pickling cucumbers to make 7 pints. I'm not sure if that is accurate or not. I don't can mine in pints, I can it in jelly jars because we don't use a ton at a time, and I'd rather get it fresh out of the pantry versus have a huge jar in my fridge that goes bad in between. So I'm gonna can it in jelly jars. So first what we're gonna do is wash cucumbers under cold water. We're gonna take off the ends of the cucumber. We're gonna take out both ends. You don't need to peel these or anything. That's all gonna go in there. And then we're gonna chop it up. So the recipe in here says to use a food processor, which I don't have a food processor, but I just chop it up as best as I can with my big chef's knife, and we've eaten it that way for the last 3 years and we don't mind. So we're gonna do that. So we're gonna wash these up, we're gonna cut off the ends, we're gonna chop it up, and then we're gonna put some salt and some turmeric over the top of it. And then we will cover, we're gonna put it in a bowl like this. We'll put all the relish back in the bowl with the salt and the turmeric. We're gonna cover it with water until it covers the relish, and then we're gonna let it sit for 2 hours. Okay, I just finished washing up the cucumbers, and one tip with washing cucumbers when you're making relish is that you want to make sure when you're using pickling cucumbers that you get all the little black spiny things off. Just not really something that you want in your relish. So pickling cucumbers are the best cucumbers to use in this recipe, although it's kind of all going to get mashed together. So if you have some bigger slicer cucumbers, this is also really good use of them too. These ones were given to me by someone, so along with the pickling cucumbers that I had from my own garden, I think that we'll have plenty to make relish today. Okay, so I finally have 8 pounds of cucumbers chopped up into little tiny pieces. This is how much 8 pounds is. I did weigh it on my scale just to make sure. And would it be faster if I used a food processor? Yes. Would it make less of a mess? Probably yes. But it's just not an appliance that I've invested in yet. I hate having small appliances everywhere in my kitchen. So for now, I'm just gonna keep chopping it. So now I'm gonna go ahead and add the salt and the turmeric and cover this with water, and we're gonna let it sit. Okay, so here is one of the changes that I make on this recipe. So with the 8 pounds of cucumbers, it calls for 1/2 cup of pickling salt. I don't buy pickling salt. I think it's mostly just so your pickles don't like have that cloudy look, which we just don't care about. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use my pink salt that I use for everything else and add the turmeric as well. So it's 1/2 cup of salt. And this is gonna get drained off, so don't feel like it's a ton. It looks like a lot. Okay, and then we're just gonna add water to cover it. I don't use water out of my sink because we have to haul our water in, so this is filtered, but not great filtered, so this is water from my Berkey. Okay, so about 8 cups of water is what it takes to cover it, and my hands are clean. So I'm just gonna get in here and mix this around so the salt's not all sitting on the top and the turmeric isn't in a clump. And then we're just gonna go like this so it's all covered, and we're gonna let this sit for the next 2 hours. Okay, so it has been 2 hours now. I should have mentioned before that you keep this covered for 2 hours. I just put a clean cloth over it. It's summer, so there's flies and bugs and all kinds of stuff, and you don't really want to eat that later. So we're gonna go ahead and take this off, and then I'm going to rinse it all, and then we're gonna put it in this heavy bottom stock pot where I've already cut up the onions and put in some fresh dill. So it takes about 2 large onions for this recipe, or 3 medium-sized ones. And then the recipe calls for dill seed, which is that dried top of the dill, but we don't like that, and we happen to have lots of fresh dill right now. So I just chopped up some of that and stuck it in there, and I'm gonna rinse this, and then we're gonna be ready to heat this up for just a little bit. All right, now that we've got this all together and I mixed it up a little bit, we're gonna add the vinegar. I get my vinegar in 1 gallon jugs from Azure. I don't order a ton of stuff from Azure anymore just because we own our own co-op, but liquid stuff I do. So I think this is pretty cheap. I don't buy the organic just because this one is a little bit cheaper, but it's still raw. And I will link to them down below if you want to check it out. But this recipe calls for 1 quart of white wine vinegar. That's just not something I keep on hand, so I actually use apple cider vinegar to can all my pickles. It's kind of a standing joke in our house that our pickles are very strong. We actually really like them that way. So I'm gonna go ahead and add 1 quart of the apple cider vinegar. The other thing that this recipe calls for that I'm not gonna add is 1/3 cup of sugar. We just don't like sweet pickles at all. Probably that amount of sugar in this recipe isn't going to make it too sweet. It's just going to kind of cut the acid, but we like the really strong, sharp pickles. So I'm just going to leave that out. I actually do not can with sugar in any of my recipes. I use honey when I make jam, and I use white grape juice when I can fruit. So it's not something that I would add anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this to our mixture here, and then we're gonna cook it on the stove, or not cook it, we're just gonna simmer it for about 10 minutes until it's heated all the way through, and then I'm gonna get packing it in jars. Okay, so we are ready to can everything up now, or get it in the canner. So I've got my clean jars, I've got my lids that are ready. I like to get everything out of the on the counter before we start, so it's just easier. And then this is my pot of the dill relish that has been simmering for the last 10 minutes, so it's definitely heated through and it's ready to go in the jars. So I'm gonna go ahead and jar all of these up, and we'll be ready to get them in the canner. Couldn't find my little jar air bubble thing today, but I did find a baby food spoon in my cabinet. I don't know why, but it's gonna work today. So after you put it in the jar, you just kind of want to go around it and make sure the air bubbles are out of it, and then we want to leave at least about a ½ inch of headspace here, so kind of on the little jars about down to this bottom thing here. So we're gonna do it just like that. So I got this all in the jars, and for some reason it made 19 jelly jars. Technically the recipe said it made 7 pints, so it should have made 14 jelly jars. But I never really find those accurate, and I weighed everything out and measured everything according to the recipe. The only thing that I didn't add was the sugar, so it's just kind of weird, but it's fine. So anyway, now I'm gonna clean the tops of the jars and put the lids on, and then they are ready to go in the canner, which I've already got on, and the water is already hot. So I'm gonna get the lids on these while they're still hot so we can get them in there. One thing that I've seen a lot lately with new canners is that they are not getting the lids to seal, or the lids are like caving in, or I'm not sure what all the issues are, but definitely want to make sure that you seal your lids properly, that it's not too tight and it's not too loose. So my general rule of thumb is I just kind of just twist it on, and then one extra little thing, and that's all it needs. And the lid is on, and it's tight enough, but it's not too tight that the lid is gonna concave onto that. And I know that some of that is an issue just with certain kinds of lids, but anyway, this is what I found that works really well for me. I have very few jars that don't seal, so I would say that that's successful probably. So this is my canner. She's kind of big, but when you hot water bath can, it really heats up the house a lot. So I like to do huge batches at once. And I knew that this was gonna be more than, 9 or 10 jelly jars. So I just went ahead and heated this up because it's canning season and I'm gonna do it more anyway. So I'm gonna get the jars in here. The water is already hot and going. I think that you can get this canner from Lehman's. So I can try to link to it below if they still have it available. I bought it several years ago, so I am not sure, but I love it and I use it all the time. So I'm gonna get the stuff in here, and we're gonna get this lid on so it stops heating up my house. All the jars are in the canner. It was boiling, but it'll take another couple minutes just to get back up to boiling temperature again. And actually I can turn it up just a little bit. So the recipe calls for 15 minutes in the canner. That's for pints. Even if the jar is a little bit bigger, like they don't have jelly jars on there, I would still go for the time that they have in the book, which is 15 minutes, except that I'm at 5,000 feet in elevation, so I have to add 5 minutes to my time because I'm water bath canning. So we're gonna leave this in here for the next 20 minutes. I just wanted to say, to clarify, I meant we're going to boil this for the next 20 minutes. So it's not up to temperature again yet. I'm gonna get it back up to a rolling boil, and then I'll set the timer for 20 minutes and it'll be done. Okay, so our 20 minutes is up, and the jars are done canning. So now what I've done is I set the timer for 5 minutes and I take the lid off the canner, and when the timer goes off, that is when I will take them out of the canner. You don't want to do it right away, just because you might have siphoning. That means the liquid will come out and spill all over, and then you just don't have as good of success rate with them sealing. So we're gonna wait for 5 minutes. I just set the timer and then I'll pull them all out. All right, it is a little while later and all of the jars of dill relish have sealed. They all look really nice. Focus. So I went ahead and I haven't taken the rims off yet because they're still slightly warm, but I did write on them. I always write what they are and then the year that they were done, because I'll forget or I'll get them mixed up with the other ones. But they look really good. Like I said earlier, I made 19 jars today, so I still have some dill relish left from last year. So along with that, we'll have plenty to get us through until next cucumber season. So I don't need to make any more relish this year. I just need to make more pickles because we go through pickles really fast. But for our family, that 19 plus whatever it is that I had left from last year, that will be enough for the whole year until we can get some more. So it was really easy, and I feel like this recipe is really easy to use with the modifications that I made. Like I said earlier, I got it out of this book, which is the Ball Blue Book that I will link down below. And like I also said earlier, I use this for a ton of stuff. It's just good basic information on you know, simple canning tips. And there is some like more complex recipes in it, I guess, but I just really like it to look up, you know, if I'm doing green beans, I never remember from one year to the next, like how much time they are, what the pressure is, etc. So I always have this book with me, which, like I said, that's why it's full of water stains, and it's not pretty anymore, but it still functions. So I'll link this one down below so you can check it out if you don't have it already. But otherwise, I'm done canning for today. One other thing that I wanted to mention was this recipe is really good to make when you have several canning recipes that you need to do in one day. Today, this was all I had to do because this is all that I have ready in the garden right now. But it's nice because you have that 2 hours where you're letting it sit in the water until you need to actually do the canning part. So I found that when I'm doing a really big canning day, which is what I like to do, I can make up the dill relish, get it in the water, and then I can work on a different canning project while I'm waiting for this one to be ready. So it's really nice to kind of figure out your time like that. I am not sure if I've ever said it on a video. I know I've said it somewhere on the blog before, but usually when I can, I have really big canning days because I get everything out and I make a huge mess all over my house, which is why I take all the rugs out of the kitchen in the summer. And so I like to do, you know, 75 to 100 jars in a day if it's possible, depending on what I'm canning. Some canning stuff is a little more intensive, and so you just can't do that. But for me, it's easier, even though I'm absolutely exhausted by the end of the day. I start super early in the morning, getting stuff ready, prepping foods, cutting things and all that, and then I usually do not end until 10 o'clock at night. But if I do it that way, like I said, I get my big mess out of the way all in one day, and then it just works better for me that way. And then I can sleep in a little bit the next day. But anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this video of making dill relish. Maybe it's something that you guys want to try for your own families. Like I said, it's really easy. It would be even easier if you had a food processor and made that go a little quicker. But it's a really simple recipe for a condiment that most people use. So it's really nice. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure and subscribe and like. I want to keep on making more videos. Hopefully this will be finally the year where I get to make some canning videos. I know I've been saying that forever, and I have some super old ones on here, but I'm going to try my best. So I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.